Hello guys, welcome to my channel. So today I'm going to cover one more interview video, and this video is going to have a live recorded interview of a candidate who is having more than 4 years experience working with Java technologies. So in this video what we are going to cover is, first we are going to see the live recorded interview video, which was the actual video of the candidate with me. Like, you can see how did the candidate performed, and you can also see yourself in the place of the interviewee, and you can compare yourself, like whether you are giving the right answers, or maybe if the candidate is answering correctly or not, right? So you can compare yourself, it doesn't matter, but it's like it will give you the real picture of how the candidate performed, and if those questions were asked to you, then how would you have performed. So you can compare yourself in place of him. Now then I will cover what were the right answers of the questions that was not properly answered basically, and then I will let you know, like, if in case you want to improve yourself, you see that there is something missing that you want to improve, then basically how do you do it. So that I will let you know at the end of the video. So stay tuned, and let's first start with the interview video. Hello. Hi Vipin, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear it.
Okay. Can you please turn your camera on?
Yeah, sure. One sec. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So are you comfortable? Can we start?
Yeah, yes, we can.
Okay. Is my voice okay? Can you hear me properly?
Yeah, yes, I can. I can hear.
Okay. Okay then. Myself Prashant, and I'm currently working as a senior software engineer in a product-based organization, and I have roughly 7 years of experience working with Java technologies. So this was brief about me. Can you brief about yourself? Okay, so which Java version are you currently using?
Currently Java 8.
So let's start with the new features that you are aware of. Can
Yes.
you please list those names?
Uh, I can say like Lambda,
Mm-hmm.
and I know something about this method reference node.
Okay.
Apart from that, the streaming APIs, I just read through those, but I
Okay.
don't have hands-on experience on that. Yeah.
Okay. So with Java 8, what are you frequently using? Like, what new feature are you currently frequently using?
Frequently, we are using this lambda function
Okay.
for doing some manipulations with the list type of data,
Okay.
and while doing some list operations, suppose we want to add some extra things to that object means. In that case, also
Mhm.
we are using this lambda. Mainly, the use case is that one only in our current project.
Okay. So what do you understand by Lambda? Like, what is Lambda expression in Java?
Yeah. Actually, its theory saying like we all know about that this Java is a purely it's not purely, it's an object-oriented language before. So
Mhm.
based on this Lambda, they are trying to do some kind of functional programming also in the Java environment. So
Okay.
by using this functional interface, it's nothing but an interface with a single abstract class. They are implemented this lambda. So by using this lambda, they can provide conciseness in the code and code reusability and all.
Okay, so code reusability, like how can we have code reusability with Lambda expression?
Um, uh, okay, actually, by using functional interface, I guess we are implementing this code reusability.
Okay, with interfaces. Okay, so what do you understand by interface?
Actually, interface is a Java class where we can write um, method declaration over there. Then we can implement child classes from the interface, and we can override that methods there. So
Okay.
By using this interface, we can implement the inheritance hierarchy here in Java.
Okay. Are you sure inheritance is the reason why we are using interfaces and not abstraction?
Not only this inheritance anyway, but yeah, abstraction also we are implementing.
Okay. The reason I'm asking this question is, like you said, reusability is being achieved using Lambda expressions, and Lambda expressions are being created using functional interfaces, and functional interfaces are interfaces, right?
Yes.
So it all leads down to interfaces.
Yes.
So, what is functional interface according to you?
Yeah. See, in the older versions of yeah,
No,
simply
with Java 8, with Java 8.
yeah, yeah. Simply this functional interface means that it is an interface which
Mhm.
having only one abstract class.
Okay. So when we say one abstract class, method, sorry, one
Yeah,
abstract method,
one abstract method.
where, yeah, what is the benefit of having only one abstract method?
Yeah, one abstract method.
Like, why not more than one or none?
Okay,
Or
good.
maybe non, or having maybe non-abstract methods also. So is that allowed even?
Yeah, I got your point. Actually, in functional interface, they are restricting to only one abstract class. So the reason behind is,
Not class, methods
yeah,
maybe
method,
at
method.
least.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
So why one abstract method? Suppose we have to, yeah, this is abstract method.
Okay, let me change my question a bit. Can I have a non-abstract method in a functional interface?
Yeah, yes, sure. You can add the default method and other kind of methods also we can write in our functional interface. But the restriction is like only one abstract method.
Okay, okay. So let's move ahead with a new, like, other question. So you said Lambda expressions you are using with collection, right? List type
Yes.
scenarios. Okay. So do you iterate over your list, or what, or something else you are doing with Lambda?
So we have, yeah, we are iterating that list. Yes,
Mhm.
iterating the list and we are taking each of them from the list and we are adding some kind of things if we needed to that particular object and we are putting again to that list and we are trying to save kind of things.
And you are not using Stream API here for iterating over the collection, right?
Yeah, mostly we were not using this streaming there.
Okay, okay, okay. No worries. Now let's move on to something new. So can we override private or static methods in Java?
Can we override? No.
When you say no, does it mean that there will be a compilation error or exception if we do that?
Okay. So there will be a compilation error.
Okay. Are you sure there will be compilation error?
Um, yeah, yes.
Okay. Okay. What do you understand by method hiding?
Method hiding.
Yeah.
So method hiding. May I know the answer? Method hiding. Oh, sorry, I don't know.
Okay. Okay. So let me give you a scenario. So
Okay.
what will happen if I put return statement
Mm-hmm.
on the catch,
Mm-hmm.
or not on the catch, on the try block?
Okay.
What will happen? What do you think will happen? So um, let me give you something on the chat window. Maybe you can copy it on your notepad and share a screen. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. So at line 2, there is some kind of exception happening. Okay.
Okay.
And at line 4, we are catching that exception. that same exception type.
Okay. Okay.
And then finally we are, let's say, printing something.
Okay.
So now what do you think will happen? Like in catch block also we are printing something, and in finally also we are printing something, right? So if we have an exception, and if we have return statement at line 3, will it go to the catch block? Will it go to the finally block? Will it print the data inside these two blocks?
Actually, uh, sorry. Um, uh, it will go to the catch block, and
Hmm.
that will print that exception. I mean,
Okay,
whatever we wrote over there, it will come.
okay, and nothing else, right?
Nothing else.
Okay, so finally block will not be executed in that case because we are returning.
Yeah, here it won't execute that final block. Final block.
Okay, okay, got it. Okay, okay. Now let's say if I have a hash map,
Okay.
and you can write it down that there is a hash map, and the key value pair is student.
Key value pair. 1 minute. 1 minute. So here.
st- yeah, student and comma integer. So here I have key as an actual object, and value is the count. Okay, it doesn't matter what we are doing, what we are storing. What
Okay.
matters is that this student is a key here,
Okay.
right? So do you think we have to make this key immutable, or it will work like this?
Hash map. So student is an object, right?
Student is an object, but for hashmap this is a key,
Okay. This is a key.
right?
And
So do you think we should make this key immutable, or will it work without being immutable?
mm, it's a key and integer. Okay. Mm, I guess it will work without doing anything.
Okay, okay. Then let's quickly talk about what immutable is.
Okay.
What is immutable?
Actually, see, we are saying this. Suppose one variable, something is created, and we cannot change that one. Uh, we cannot change that value. Actually, we are registering this all into a into a pool kind of thing, and we are creating a very. Suppose we are using new means we are creating new objects. It is not
Are
overriding.
you? I think you are talking about string class here. The question is, what is immutable according to you? And you said that the variable which cannot be changed, right?
Yeah, immutable means we cannot change that. Yeah,
So that can be achieved using final keyword, right? If we have a variable, and if I want that variable to be immutable, then I can just give it final,
yeah,
and the value will not be changed,
will not be.
right?
Yes.
Now let's talk about if I have to create a class or
Okay.
an object of that class immutable. How will I do that? Let's first talk about class.
Okay. So. Uh, so immutable class we can achieve through static keyword.
Through static keyword. Why static?
Um, Actually, I guess like static means we cannot do the overriding.
Static means we cannot do the overriding. Okay, but we don't have to override the method here. Immutable means that, um, okay, let's talk about final keyword. So if I put my class as final, like if I do final class test. So
Okay.
can I override this class now?
No.
Why?
Why? Because we use the final keyword over there, right? So
Hmm.
suppose if we use this final means we cannot do this overriding, I guess.
Okay, and can we use a static keyword with our class? Can I do a static class test?
Static class test. Uh, Static class test. Actually, in my remembrance, I'm not seeing like that.
Okay.
Um,
You said that we can use a static keyword. That is why I went there, but
okay.
that's okay. So yeah, no worries. Let's move ahead. So now we are done with Java. So let's quickly come down to Spring Boot.
Okay.
Have you worked on Spring Boot yet?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay, and you are comfortable with it, right?
Yeah. Yes. Yes.
Okay. So if I were to ask you like how much will you rate yourself out of 5 in Spring Boot?
Um, Between 3.5 like that. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So what are the advantages of Spring Boot? Why should I use Spring Boot?
Yeah. Actually, the main advantage is like rapid development application. We can implement. We can achieve that in our business. And the other thing, we don't want to worry much about the dependencies which we are going to use in our Spring Boot application. And the other thing, um, like multiple environment support is there,
Okay.
and rich set of annotations are there. We can, by using these things, we can write our code by in Spring Boot.
Okay. You said that dependency headache is reduced, right?
Yeah.
With Spring Boot. So we all are using Maven and Gradle for dependencies,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
So how is Spring Boot helping us here?
Actually, in the Spring Boot application, we are having this pom.xml. So
Hmm.
if we want to add any new dependency in our project means we can add inside a dependency tag in our pom.xml. So
Hmm.
once we have, after adding these things, we just want to do a Maven install. So it will pick all the dependency classes into our class path. Yeah, that's how I guess it helps us to
But
independent.
but what you're talking about is the description of why we should use Maven, because pom.xml file is of Maven. Maven picks all the dependencies from pom.xml and download it and put it in your class path.
Yeah.
So that's not Spring Boot.
Oh, okay.
Okay, no worries. Okay, so you said that we can create multiple environments with Spring Boot, right?
Yes.
So how can we achieve that? Like how many environments, first of all, can we create and how can we do that?
Yeah, for that actually we can have multiple environments like in real-time applications like dev, QA,
Mm-hmm,
prod UAT, something like that. And we
mm-hmm,
were having a Spring Profiles active key which we want to use in our property files.
mm-hmm,
So by using this one, we can mention which environment we want to connect. So we
mm-hmm.
just want to configure that one in our property file. So
Okay, which property file?
in application properties.
In application properties. And this application dot properties, is it inside your code or outside your code?
No, it's just outside the code.
Okay, so we don't have to create multiple jars. We can directly change this properties file and change the environment, right?
Yes.
Okay, good. Okay, what do you understand by dev tools that we have in Spring Boot?
Dev tools. Actually, I'm not remembering those. Like, I'm not familiar with this word dev tools.
Okay, no worries. So you might have used few annotations when you are working with Spring Boot, right?
Yeah, yes.
So can you name a few that you know of?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I was used this at Spring Boot application, then AutoWide at service, then at value, at REST controller, at request mapping, then yeah, mostly we are using this only.
Okay. So have you used Spring Boot application annotation?
Yeah, at Spring Boot application, yeah, we are using.
Okay. So do you know what is the like what this annotation internally uses? Like I know that this is a combination of few annotation. So do you know like how many annotations are being used internally?
Yeah, it's a combination of three. Like these are at enable auto configuration, then component
Okay.
scan, and
Mm-hmm.
other one configuration is.
Configuration. Okay. Okay. And what about internal mapping of REST controller?
Internal mapping of REST controller. Okay, so
Yeah. What? Yeah.
uh, um, REST control. Okay, so which is used for our so building the REST APIs, and which is uh, uh, it. Your question is like which are the internal components of this particular
Yes. Yes.
project?
Yes. Like with
Okay,
Spring Boot application, you said that these many annotations we use, right?
yeah, for this one at the other two are, it's a combination of two. One is at controller, and the other one is uh, response body. Yeah.
Response body. Okay. 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 Then that's good. Okay. So what is path variable annotation?
Yeah, path variable annotation we are using with our what we can say, like, so inside the path, suppose if you want to send something to our server from the
Mm-hmm.
client, so in that case, for consuming that particular API, we are using this at path variable annotation with our URL mapping in our controller.
Okay. So that means if I want to get the data from the URI, then I'm using path variable annotation.
Yeah, like suppose if you are passing some ID with the URL,
Mm-hmm.
some ID is equal to 1 from the in the inside the URL itself, we are adding like some ID equal to some X values. Then
Mm-hmm.
we should use this as path variable in our controller to get this value from the URL.
Okay. Okay. Got it. And what is the difference between request mapping and get mapping?
Okay. So request mapping we can use for all kind of methods like post, put, get,
Mm-hmm.
delete. For everything we can use this request mapping, but this get
Mm-hmm.
mapping we can use only for get type of API calls.
Okay. Okay. So we use controller with get mapping or REST controller with get mapping, or can we use with both?
Yeah, we use controller with get mapping,
Mm-hmm.
controller with get mapping. Yeah, controller with get mapping, and REST controller if we are using means we don't want to use this one.
Okay. 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 Good enough. Okay. Then let's move ahead with microservices. Have you worked on microservices yet?
Yeah, yes. Yeah, we are working.
Okay. So where exactly are you using microservices?
So actually, in my current project, we are using this microservice architecture. Like our UI service is a microservice, fully independent service, and we are having a like we are named it as core API. So it is responsible for the all the UI API codes, and some other
Mhm.
file reader service, account service, and all is there. So these are our microservices.
Okay. And which client are you currently using?
Means in microservice.
Yes.
Actually, this uh, REST client we are using for internal connectivity and all.
Okay. Okay. Is
And
there
in
any
some,
cloud?
yeah.
Okay. 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 Okay then. Okay. What do you think are the disadvantages of using microservices?
What is the usage of microservices? You're asking?
Disadvantages, cons of using microservices.
Yeah, see disadvantages like yeah, well, suppose if we are having larger number of UI codes to multiple microservices, in that
Mhm.
case, we want to use some kind of uh, um, API manipulation, API management things in between this client and server.
Mhm.
So we want to do some extra effort for that. And the other disadvantage is like, suppose if we are building some particular things in a particular microservice, and it has some dependency on some other microservices, means we should take care about these all things while doing integrate while building our blocks. So
Okay.
we should, as a developer point of view, we should at least want to know what are all the dependency microservices for this particular code and all.
Okay. Any other disadvantage that you see?
Actually,
Okay.
there
No
is
worries. No worries. So, how do independent microservices communicate with each other?
okay. So uh, we can use multiple techniques for that. So one is uh, currently in our project what we are doing means normally anyway we are using, I guess, like we are using this queue mechanism. So we were
Okay.
having an active MQ. So each
Mm-hmm.
microservice is sending, yeah, microservices are sending data to this particular queue, and we were having responsible listeners for that particular queue. And in that way, we can get communicate with the microservices. And the other thing, by using the REST client, we can by using the REST client, we can communicate with each microservices through its URLs.
Okay. And what is the type for response and request that you are getting and receiving?
If we use REST template,
Like
REST client,
when you no. When we say communication, it might be sending some data, right?
yeah,
So in
yes,
what
yes.
format are you receiving that data?
Uh, okay, so uh,
Okay, let me simplify this question for you. How do REST services, web services, RESTful
mm,
web services interact with each other?
so RESTful services interact with each other. So there should be some APIs will be there, and by using this exchange method, and inside that exchange, we are typing like what kind of method is this, like whether this one is a post, put, or get, and request body.
Okay.
And
Okay.
yeah,
Okay. Have you done any kind of testing while creating your microservices?
actually, we were done some kind of JUnit while implementing some classes previously, but we are
Okay.
not regularly doing that.
Okay. So can you tell me like what are the important or the what I can say main components of microservice architecture?
So main component of microservice architecture. I'm not getting a name. Yeah.
No issues, no issues. Okay, let me quickly come back to Java. I think I
Okay.
have missed few questions. So, can you tell me about the principal OOPS principles that we have in Java? How many are there?
So this OOPS concept you are asking?
Yes, principles. Yes.
Okay, so like one is polymorphism,
Mm-hmm.
then encapsulation,
Mm-hmm.
data hiding, then platform independence, then inheritance.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I guess these are the main.
Okay, what do you understand by encapsulation?
So encapsulation means um, uh, we are wrapping this data into a single unit. That is the definition saying.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Let's say, not wrapping the data. Let's say if I want to achieve encapsulation in Java, how would I do it?
Oh, sorry, I'm not remembering that.
Okay, okay. Okay, let me give you a scenario and you don't have to do anything. You just have to tell me like what do you think will work to achieve this, okay?
Okay.
Okay, so let's say I have a linked list and I want to delete the middle element of this linked list. How would I do it?
Okay. So this linked list means it's a kind of data structure with
Yes,
we can say like it have multiple nodes, and this each
yes.
node is connected to other one by using a link. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
so suppose you want to remove a middle element from a linked list means what you want to do means you want to cut these links from the prior one,
Mm-hmm.
and after that you want to connect the existing nodes each other.
Okay, you are defining linked list right now. The question is that you have to delete the middle element from the linked list.
So that's what I guess. Suppose if you want to delete the middle element means you want to remove that connections of the middle element, right?
Um, you can say that, but point is how will you do it? Question is
So
how will you do it?
like in Java, like what how we can do?
Yes.
Okay. Actually, by using the length, you can get the middle element. And if you want to remove, I'm not exactly know how we can remove that.
Okay,
Like
no worries.
just for getting that data by using the length, we can get the middle.
Okay, no worries then. I think I'm done with my part of the interview. Do you have any question for me? Okay, so as we have already seen the video, now let's cover all the questions which I thought were not answered properly or could have been answered properly, right? So the first question was, what are the new features of Java 8? So we all are familiar that Java 8 is a big feature release and you should at least know about Java 8, but it doesn't mean that the interviewer is going to ask only about Java 8. He can ask about Java 11, Java 13 and maybe later versions also, but you should be familiar with at least Java 8, right? Because that is the agenda. So in this question, what I expect is what you have used in your project. What do you know basically, and what you have tried out on your maybe local project or real project. So that is what I'm looking for, and I think that is what most of the interviewers are looking for, right? So they don't mean that how many features are there and you have to name each and every one of them. They mean that how many features are you aware of and used in your current project, right? So that has to be that. And also if you can cover all of the topics, that's good, but at least lambda expressions, method references, functional programming or functional interface, and then you don't have to take care of all of them, but these three are the most important things that you should know of, right? So that is that. Now the next question is, what is lambda expression? Okay, so answer is pretty clear because like I've said, Lambda expression and function interfaces are key features of Java 8. So they both are being used collectively. So whenever someone asks about function interfaces, you have to tell them about Lambda expressions and vice versa. So here, why I said function interface, because function interface has only one abstract method. Now Lambda expression is a way to write the functionality or the way of implementing that method, that abstract method in your function interface. So if you remember that we used to create anonymous classes, and right now we have runnable interface in our Java. So runnable interface is again a functional interface where we have only one abstract method, which is your run method. So a Lambda expression can be a way to implement that method in a concise way. So previously when we used to implement it, it takes a lot of lines basically and it doesn't look clear. So Lambda expression is not clear but concise, and it's like a single line of code which you write to implement function interfaces. Now here a continuous question could be, can you give an example of where you have implemented Lambda expression? So you can simply say that if you have created ever a thread, then you can say like, yes, I have used Lambda expression along with my thread. Like wherever you have used runnable interface, there you should have used Lambda expression, right? Then there are more ways, like so runnable interface is a function interface, but it is already provided to us. What if our requirement is like to create a function interface of our own? Then we will have only one abstract method, then we can use Lambda expression there. So you can give these two scenarios basically, and it don't matter much. It's like they just want to see if you have used it or not. Like it's not an elimination criteria basically. So that is that. Now moving toward the next question. So what are function interfaces? Like I said, these two questions come continuously. So function interface, like I said, is having only one abstract method, and that is how you identify that this is a function interface. Then there is an annotation at function interface, which is not mandatory, it's just optional. And function interfaces are being used so that you can create a lot of Lambda expressions basically to remove the lines basically. So previously whenever we used to implement function interfaces and their methods, then we have to override it, and ultimately we are using a lot of lines. Lambda expression is a concise way, like I've said previously, so it reduces those lines and gives us a better option. So that is why function interfaces are there, and these are the function interfaces. Now moving on to the next question. Why function interface has only one abstract method? So this is a good question, right? So simple answer is that Lambda expression cannot work if you have two abstract methods. So Lambda expression is going to work on a particular interface, and if you have two methods, then how will it identify that okay, you have to use this and you have to use that? So it will get confused, right? So that is why we have only one abstract method, because we can create a Lambda expression without making Java confused that where to go basically, where this expression is going to be linked with. So that is how, or that is why we have only one abstract method with function interfaces. But we can have non-abstract method, and that is why this question. So can I have non-abstract methods in function interfaces? Yes. We can have as many default and static methods that we want, because function interface is an interface, and with Java 8 we got default and static methods in interfaces. Now can we override private or static methods? So this question is a bit tricky. So when I say that can we, it doesn't mean that we cannot. It's like we can override, but point is, are they overridden? That is the point, right? So when I say can we override, that means that if you look at the code, let's say I'm talking about private method. So I have a class A where I have a private method, then I have class B which is implementing or extending class A, then I have the same method, private method, there in my class B. So what do I mean here? So they both look like they are overridden method, but they are not, because private method belongs to the existing class, like where we have created that method, that is where it is only going to belong. So here it looks like overridden, but we are not overriding it. So it's like it will look like it, and there is not going to be any compilation error or an exception. And same goes for static method. So static basically says that this object or this method is going to belong with your class only, right? So it is class level basically. So that is how it raises a tricky question, but it will not give any compilation error or an exception. Do remember that. Now moving on to next. What will happen if I have a return statement on try block? Again, a tricky question. So always remember that if finally block always happens. So if you have try, catch and finally block, finally will always happen. But let's say there is an exception happening, and after that exception I am having a return statement, right? So will it go to my catch exception? Yes, it will go. But will it come back to that return statement? That is the question that I'm trying to ask here. So if I have a return statement, let's say there are two exception happening, and between I have a return statement. So let me give you the code also, because that will give a proper demonstration. Okay, so this is the code and this is just a rough demonstration. So here you can see that I have a string s which is null, and then I have try catch block. I don't have finally here, so let's add finally here. Okay, so let's first try with only the exception. So here I am just trying to get a null pointer exception, because as is null, and when I'm trying to do null dot equals null, it is a null pointer exception basically. So if I try run, so here you can see that I got inside my catch block exception, and then it executed finally and then hello world. So I think this compiler is being problematic. It should print hello world in the next line, but that's okay. Point is that first we got the exception at this line 8, then we got inside a catch block, printed the exception, and then we executed the finally block, and then lastly the hello world, right? So this is the order which is considered normal scenario. Now what will happen if I do return here? So what does return mean? Return mean that from here I am going to return from this method or from this block basically. But when I run this, what is happening? I'm getting the same output which I was getting in the previous scenario. So here I'm getting the exception, catching the exception here, printing the finally block, and then hello world, right? So this was it. Now what will happen if I have another statement after return? So this is where this return statement comes into the play. So it says that from here I'm just giving back the execution. I'm not going to execute anything else. But point is, I have a line at line number 10. So this try block is where this return statement matters. So this is the this return method is for this try block basically. So when I'm returning from this statement, then I'm coming back here to the hello world, because these try catch finally executes as a single entity basically. If there is an exception or not, in that order itself we will execute these try catch and finally, right? Now the point is, what will happen if I have a return statement here? It will not go to this line, because it will go from this try block and reach somewhere around here. Now what will happen? Will it give any output, or will it be a compilation error, or will there be an exception? So yes, there will be something. So let's see. So here you can see that it says unreachable statement. So this line number 10 is unreachable, because after this line compiler will not see this. So that's why this is a compile time exception or compilation error. So that is what I was expecting from the question, right? So I hope this is clear. Now let's move on to the next question. Okay, so does the key of HashMap need to be immutable? So yes, it does. Now why? Because let's say, okay, so let's say that I have a HashMap of student comma integer. Now this student class is my key here, or the student object is going to be my key here. Now let's say what I'm inserting into this map is student s1 and let's say student s2, these two objects. Now let's say they both are having values like ID 1, name let's say John, and let's say age, so age would be let's say 14. Now copying this, so let's change the date to 15, and Sam, and change the ID to 2. Now these are the two student objects that I will insert to this map, right? Now let's say after inserting both these values to my map, afterwards someone or something tries to alter this student object. Let's say I do s1 dot set id, and then I try to change this, let's say 1 to 2. So in that case the ID of these two are same, and if based on this ID scenario I am checking whether they both are same object or not in my equals and hashcode method, then it will be really troublesome for map or for an order to be created, because if anyone can change the value, it will change the scenario also. Like it can be anything, it depends on the scenario, but obviously it is not going to be the expected scenario. Now that is that. Now we see that there is a problem. Now if someone can change these two objects, that is how this problem is being arised. What will happen if we allow this object to never change? Then this problem will never happen. So that is why it is required for this key to be immutable, so that if in case someone tries to alter it, because based on your key value pair everything is getting decided in your map, so that is why your key should be immutable, right? Now moving on to the next question, can we create a static class? So this was never the agenda of asking the question, but somehow the interviewee raised this, and because of that I asked this question. So yes, you can create a static class, and yeah, that is obvious, right? So that is that. Now the next question, what are OOPS principles and how do you achieve encapsulation? So there are 4 principles that we already know of. Now how do you achieve encapsulation? That was the question. So you can use your access modifiers or specifiers, or you can use private variables and setter getter methods to provide encapsulation basically. So that is how you can achieve encapsulation. Now moving on to the next question. Now what are some advantages of Spring Boot? So I asked this question so that I can basically know that whether the interviewee knows about Spring or Spring Boot, and does he know what advantages or disadvantages we had with Spring and then Spring Boot came. So this was the agenda of asking this question. So with Spring Boot, what new features are really important are like your live reload, your dev tools, actuator, Spring profiles, and then lesser and lesser configuration. So with Spring we used to do a lot of configuration, which was a pain for every developer, because he has to create a lot of XML files and do every configuration. Like I'm talking about XML configuration based, and that is like a lot of time consuming process. With Spring Boot we reduced that, because Spring Boot also has embedded servers, so we don't have to download Tomcat and then add it to our project. So that is also less headache. So these are combined features that you can have with Spring Boot, and then there are many more. But if you say these many, then I'm happy. Now moving on, what are Spring profiles? So Spring profiles are basically for your environments or environments. So let's say I have three environments basically for my product or application, which are dev environment, test environment, and your production environment. So these 3 environments should have a configurable property, so that the same code can be executed in different environment. Let's say I have a jar or a war file, and what I want to do, I don't want to modify that depending on which environment I have to run. I want that same jar file to be used in all these 3 environments. Then I should have something configurable, which could be a properties file, through which I can basically determine that okay, this is my dev environment, so use this environment now use my test environment, now use my production environment. So that is how Spring profiles comes into the play. Because of Spring profiles we can have a property in your application.properties, and then you can have multiple properties file based on your environments. You can have a profile or an environment for your, or a properties file for your each environment. So in my case, it would be 3 extra properties file other than application.properties, and through my property spring.profiles.active, I can make which profile is currently being used with my jar or with my code. So that is how I can make it configurable, and there is no need of remaking jar files or changing the code, right? So that is that. Now what are dev tools? So dev tools basically stand for developer tools. So whatever you need, it is being provided by dev tools. It's not like all the things, but like I said, live reload, automatic restart, these 2 major features are being provided to us by dev tools, and then there are many more, right? Now moving on to the next question. So what annotation have you frequently used with Spring Boot? So there are a lot of annotation that we basically use, but when I say Spring Boot, I mean that if a framework is coming, then you should be aware of the annotations coming with that framework itself. So what I mean here is like you should be aware of those annotations which are coming by default with your framework, right? So that is what I meant here, and these annotations can be different. Like from my answer it could be different, from your answer it could be different, but there are some annotations which are most important and you should name them. So the most important annotation according to me are Spring Boot configuration annotation, enable auto configuration, and then your Spring Boot application annotation. And somehow you can also say that like if I am asking the question, then obviously I'm going to ask one continuous question, that do you know about the internal annotation being used by Spring Boot application? So yeah, it is a combination of Spring Boot configuration, enable auto configuration, configuration properties scan, and your component scan. So that should be a perfect answer, and which is what I'm expecting here, right? So that is that. Now moving on to the next question. So this was the continuous question, and which we have already answered. So moving on, REST controller. So here what I'm trying to ask is that we had controller annotation, now we have at REST controller annotation. Now what basically is REST controller annotation, and how is it better, or like how is it different than our controller annotation? So controller is used to mark classes as your controller basically, which is like what we used with Spring MVC. But with REST controller annotation, it is like a special controller specifically for your RESTful services. So it is a combination of controller and response body annotation, and that is what I'm expecting with this answer. Now moving on to the next, path variable annotation. Now this question is going to be different, because I'm not going to directly ask like, are you aware of path variable annotation? I would try to ask like, do you know the difference between request param and path variable annotation, right? So previously we used to use request param annotation, and now we have another annotation which is path variable annotation. And what is the difference? That is the question here. So request param annotation extract values from your query string, but your path variable annotation extract values from your URI. Now this is the difference, and this is what I was looking for. Now moving on to the next question, what is the difference between request mapping and get mapping? Now this difference is similar to what we have talked with controller and REST controller. So request mapping is for your Spring MVC, where we used to create a controller and then a mapping. So this request mapping is going to be generic, and then we have to specify the method, whether it is get, whether it is post, and other HTTP methods, right? There we have to provide this. But with get mapping annotation, we know that this is a request mapping, but of HTTP method type get. Now there can be post mapping annotation, there are basically post mapping and other mapping annotations. So this is the difference here. Now moving on to the next, where and how are you using microservices in your project? So here I just wanted to know whether the interviewee has used microservices or aware of microservices in his current project. So he told me all about it, and you should be aware of your blueprint, or like the flow of your project, like how is it communicating with other microservices, or how your project basically work from a start point to an end point. So that is what you should be aware of in your project, because there can be many questions other than just microservices. They can ask about queue management, they can ask about database, if you have database singular or databases plural, right? So there can be a lot of questions based on your project, so you should be aware of your projects. Now moving on to the next, what are some disadvantages of using microservices architecture? Alright, so with every framework or with every architecture, every type of a functionality, you see some pro and some cons. Then it totally depends on you or your requirement whether you want to use it or not. There isn't a perfect framework, right? So the first disadvantage is that microservices can get complex in future. So if you are creating a lot of microservices and if you have a lot of dependency between microservices, if you are creating a code without thinking of design patterns or good practices, then it can be complex. And when they get complex, then debugging, logging, testing, developing, everything gets complex. So that is one disadvantage of microservices. Then microservices are very expensive when you compare it with monolithics, which were the previous architecture which we used to use. So services needs to communicate with each other, which can result in a high volume of remote calls, and this can increase your network latency and cost basically. So that is how microservices can be expensive. Now coming to the communication part, so if there is a lot of communication in between your microservices, then there is a higher chance of failure during this communication. So that is also one disadvantage. And testing is always a pain with distributed environment. So if you have a distributed architecture in your current project, then then the testing is going to be really complex. And another disadvantage could be that it is difficult if you have a lot of microservices. If you have a large number of services, then this is going to be difficult to manage. So this is what I consider disadvantage of microservices architecture. Now moving on to the next question, how do microservices communicate with each other? So there are multiple ways to do it. Now depending on if we are using synchronous way here or asynchronous way, the method varies. So with synchronous, we can use REST template or Fein basically. So REST template is really common or commonly used basically. Like I am even using REST templates, so that could be our one answer. With asynchronous way, we can use message broker like your ActiveMQ, Kafka. So that can be one thing. So this is how your microservices communicate with each other. Now moving on to the next question, what are the main components of microservices architecture? So remember here that I'm talking about architecture and not something related to your project. So there are 5 core components of microservices architecture. First is going to be your microservice, which is the foundation of your microservice architecture. So that is that. Microservices, I think everyone is aware of. Then we have containers. So containers are like packaging your services and their dependencies and providing a unit, like a collective unit. So containers are not necessary for microservices deployment, but sometimes we use Docker for that purpose. Now we have service mesh. Service mesh is like it will create a dynamic messaging layer to facilitate your communication in between your microservices. Then we have service discovery. So service discovery is like, let's say if I have a number of microservices, and service discovery will help service instances adapt in changing deployment, distribute load between microservices. Like however my requirement is, depending on that I can do it. Right. And the fifth most important one is your API gateway. So API gateway are like main layer of abstraction between your microservices and the outside client. So API gateway will handle a large amount of communication, so it requires a lot of thinking to create that. But if you have a API gateway, it can speed up your communication between microservices and client by, let's say, creating or standardizing protocols and using good practices. So it is like the most common or core component of microservices architecture. So there are a lot of platforms that we can use, like we have Microsoft, we have Amazon's platform, then we have open source providers such as Kong, right? So there are a lot of API gateways that we can use. So these are the main components of microservices architecture. Now moving on to the next question, and this was the programming question that I asked, and it is like how will you delete the middle element of linked list? So this is a programming question. Like here you can tell me the logic, what you are thinking. Now I can give you the easiest logic here, because that is what I think that matters, because if you can understand the easiest logic, you can think over it and then provide a better solution. So the simple solution is going to be count the number of nodes in your linked list and then delete let's say if I have n nodes in my linked list, so I have to just delete the n by 2, which is going to be the middle one, and then if I just delete that means that I have completed the agenda here, right? So this could be the simplest approach. Efficient approach could be that let's say if I traverse my linked list using, let's say if I do 2 traverses basically, so I can use a slow pointer. So this question is basically an advanced version of how will you identify the middle element of a linked list. So if you can identify the middle element, then you can delete it also, right? So this is like that, the advanced version of the finding of middle element. So here what you need to do is you can use 2 pointers. So that is why I meant 2 traversers. So when you use 2 pointers, you will use a slow pointer and a fast pointer. Slow pointer will move from one node to the next node, so which means 1 step. Your fast pointer is going to move 2 steps ahead. So it is going to move faster comparatively with your slow pointer. But when your fast pointer reaches the end of the linked list, then your slow pointer is going to be at the middle of your linked list, and whichever node is being pointed out by a slow pointer, you have to remove that element, and that's it. So what I mean by removing that node is like remove the pointers from that node and just point to the next one, and this is how you basically delete the middle element. So these are the 2 approaches which you can use or refer. Now moving on to the next topic, which is how to improve yourself. So I can answer this question by taking the feedback of the interviewee. So I thought that he was missing a lot of basic or core fundamental concepts of Java, or let's say your programming basically. So that is what I think he was missing, and that is what I think if you are missing also, then you should improve on that first. So whether you are a 2 years experienced guy or 6 years experienced guy, your core knowledge is very mandatory. So if you don't have that knowledge, then there is not going to be anything which is going to be positive with your feedback, because at least you should have a core or basic knowledge, right? Then you can have additional knowledge which can be a positive or added advantage, but again your core knowledge should be there. That is the first criteria. Now second thing could be, I have seen that a lot of interviewee sometimes get nervous even if they are telling the right answer. So I try to see if they are nervous or not. I try to give them hint if they are like going there but not able to answer it properly. But point is, how do you improve yourself here? So you should try to give a mock. You can find out on any platform. There are a lot of platforms which basically conduct mock interviews for free. You can do that. Also you can let me know. I also do mock interviews, but certainly I will put that video on YouTube. I'm just kidding, I won't. So yeah, there are a lot of platforms where you can try for mock interviews to improve yourself better, to gain more confidence. And last thing that I would recommend is always read job description. So that is where you will get to know about the topics that could be asked in your interview, right? So these are the topics that I can think of right now. If you have any more topics in mind, do let me know in the comment section. Everyone else will get to read that and maybe get better, right? So this is it for this video. I really hope that you liked this video. If you did, then please hit the like button. And this is it for this video. I really hope that we will meet in some another video. Till then, have a good day, stay safe, and bye bye.